Hi, folks, and welcome back to MMA Talking Heads, presented as part of the weekly installment on MMAmedia.com. I'm Jason Probst, here with my awesome and eminently talented co-host Ian Parker. Ian, how are you doing after UFC 156?
Oh, I'm excited for the next one. Last night was a nice little treat from the UFC. How you doing, Jay?
Doing well, man. I figured we'd run down the card results, what we want to see out, a few of the winners and losers, and as well as the biggest winner and loser from UFC 156 last night. Start off with Ian McCall and Joseph Benavidez, Jiu-Jitsu, who is known as his nom de plume. Benavidez kind of soldiered through, won the first and third rounds, took a close decision. Obviously a big win for him in the context of the flyweight division. Your thoughts on this and who you'd like to see both of them face next?
I think Joey's going to fight Demetrius Johnson next. I think it makes sense. You know, the division with the lack of depth, I think you're going to have those two fight probably every other month for the next 3 years.
Right.
You know, I think Ian McCall, even if he loses his next 5 fights, they should never get rid of him in the UFC. He comes out to fight, does not play it safe, and he's exciting. I think him versus John Dotson would be a lot of fun. You know, you take the two losers who are essentially still ranked in the top 4, you place them together, and then you have guys like John Maraca, Lineker, and Luis Gaddino, who are also a little bit further behind them. And I think that's the matchup you make. I think it'd be real interesting. And truthfully, I'd love to see Demetrius Johnson versus Joey Benavidez again.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, we look at the lightweight division about 4, 5, 6 years ago. You know, people didn't think there was enough talent there, and obviously there's a boatload of it now. It's the best division there is. Now, speaking of the second fight of the card, John Fitch was a slight favorite coming in against Damian Maia at welterweight. Kind of an interesting fight, and I think this one surprised a lot of people with how one-sided it was, as Maia just pretty much grapple smashed, for lack of a better word, John Fitch in a one-sided decision. What do you think of Maia's performance? Was it a little bit brilliant but boring? And where would you like to see him go up against next?
That's a pretty good way to put it, brilliant but boring. You know, I think everyone expected it to be this way, except I think they thought that, you know, Fitch would have the top position and just grind it out. I think Damian is really going back to his roots. This is how he got to Anderson Silva and a title fight, was by coming in and overwhelming people with his outstanding jiu-jitsu. Would I like to have seen him finish John Fitch if he was going to win this fight? Of course, it didn't happen, but he still beat John Fitch, who is still a reputable opponent. I think you see Damian Maia, sorry. I think he should fight someone like Tyron Woodley. I think you build up Woodley nicely, and both of them coming off wins. They both are definitely main card worthy. And I think someone like John Fitch, you know, go back to the board and maybe have him fight someone. I don't even know. Maybe have him fight Martin Kampmann.
Yeah, you know, and the interesting thing was, you know, when Maia debuted at middleweight, I mean, he definitely seemed kind of like this wild card that had this whole new level people didn't know how to solve. I think people figured out some elements of his game, but, you know, he wasn't as effective at it. At 170 pounds, this guy's really strong. He can basically blanket people, and I think he's just going to be a handful for anyone. Now, speaking of a non-blanket, I think coming into the third fight in the card, Alistair Overeem against Antonio Bigfoot Silva. What happened? I mean, obviously, biggest winner of the night, obviously Silva in a stunning third-round knockout. What was wrong with Overeem? I mean, he just didn't look himself. He wasn't as aggressive, and he kind of almost seemed to show up kind of hoping the other guy would crumble, and he didn't, and instead he got slept. What happened here?
You know, Overeem looked very good in rounds 1 and 2. He looked like he had control. I scored him winning rounds 1 and 2 pretty decisively, you know, 10-9, 10-9. I think it comes down to a few things. One, Overeem really has not I don't want to question his resume, but outside of this fight and maybe against Brock Lesnar, has he fought anyone out there who was really in the top 10 in the world in a long time? My answer is going to be no.
Not at heavyweight.
You know, yeah, exactly.
The light heavyweights he fought beat him.
You know, exactly. You know, I mean, someone like Brett Rogers, at the time, maybe would have been top 10 because of who, you know, of his win streak. But even then, look, this was bound to happen somewhere, somehow. I thought it was going to happen if he fought Kane. But you know what? You can't count Bigfoot out. I did say the last time we spoke, Bigfoot is absolutely extremely athletic for his size.
He did.
He's very fast, and he's got good cardio. Look, he got smashed by Kane. Kane's the best heavyweight in the world. He got beat up by Cormier. Cormier could be number 2, number 3. So you know what? It is what it is. I think Overeem being out of the cage for a year, I think not being on whatever he got popped for, definitely took a toll. He didn't look as shredded. He even looked a little sloppy outside of his upper body. All right, and I think he just got a little too cocky, and Bigfoot just didn't give up. And kudos to Bigfoot. You know, I think the UFC has a lot of decisions to make in that division. It'd be pretty wild if somehow you saw Kane versus Daniel Cormier. I don't think that would happen, but I do think someone like if you can get Josh Barnett to sign to the UFC, I think it'd be really cool to see Overeem versus Barnett. I'm sorry, you see Bigfoot versus Josh Barnett next, and then maybe you have someone like Overeem fight. Oh God, I don't even know
Congo?
Well, you know what? You have Congo versus Roy Nelson coming up.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I think, you know what? You want to get a little creative. Why not do Alistair Overeem versus someone like Travis Brown?
That's a good setup fight for him. If he can't win that fight, then he doesn't deserve to fight anybody else. I mean,
exactly.
You know, and I think the interesting thing is, this kind of reminded me a little bit of when Shogun Rua debuted in the UFC against, I think it was Forrest Griffin, wasn't it? Or one of his early fights. And, everybody thought Griffin was dead meat. And instead, he pulled the Silva, outlasted the guy, and took him out. And I've always, frankly, been fascinated when a guy gets bopped for performance-enhancing drugs, which Overeem was obviously on for years. I mean, everybody knew it. Nobody wanted to say anything. He just put on 60 pounds of muscle, horse meat, whatever.
Yeah.
And he didn't look as shredded, as aggressive, and he just got, gotten rid of by a guy that wasn't going to go away easy. No, that was a big win, very redemptive for Silva, who I think because the way he looks and kind of the way he fights, he seems a little bit plodding, but he's a tough guy, and he's, very resilient. Now, moving into the semi-main event, talk about people that didn't deliver. Rashad Evans came up terribly flat against Antonio Rogério Nogueira. This was an eminently winnable fight for him, and it was supposed to send him, to the middleweight division with a little mojo, some buzz. Instead, I thought he kind of screwed the pooch. Well, what was he doing in there?
You know what? Maybe another case of ring rust. Maybe another case of his heart's just not in it anymore. Maybe he just feels that, maybe he just took Little Nog way too lightly. Look, Little Nog's been around for a very long time. Now, don't get me wrong. I did not think that he had any chance outside of a puncher's chance, cliche as always,
right,
to beat Rashad Evans. Rashad really disappointed me last night. He let me down. That was not the same Rashad we're used to seeing. He said that it took a while for him to get his head back into the sport after losing to John Jones. Once you're at the top of the mountain, sometimes it takes something else to motivate you, and the win over this to get Anderson Silva may have been that. But I can tell you right now, there's one guy sitting in Long Island named Chris Weidman who's probably doing backflips after watching this thing go down. He's watching Rashad Evans go down, and he's pretty much – the UFC is being forced to pair Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman together, although it's probably not the most ideal situation marketing-wise right now.
Sure.
There's only a few other things they could do with the middleweight division. Rashad blew it. Simple as that. Now they're going to probably have to pair him up against, someone a little bit further back in the division.
Right.
And, the only thing you can do with the middleweight division, if you don't give it to Weidman, which at this point I don't know how you don't, then you let Chris fight Luke Rockhold for the #1 contender spot, and you let Vitor Belfort fight the winner of Hector Lombard and Yoshino Okami. If you really want to give it time.
And that's the thing that kind of bothers me about Silva saying, and this isn't a knock on Silva the champion. I don't think he's ducking Chris Weidman. I don't think that Silva would duck, an army of people against him. It does bother me when he kind of sort of acts like he's above fighting Chris Weidman, or he wants to take a year off or whatever. Hey, Weidman is the #1 contender. He's the best available guy. I don't care if he's only known by him and his 3 in-laws. The guy deserves a title shot, and that's what being champion is about. And so I think if there's any, any kudos sent this year to Nogueira, I think Chris Weidman needs to send him a thank you card, because he did him a favor in kind of creating the right situation. There's nobody else left, and I really want to see that fight, because I want to see Anderson Silva fight again. I don't want to see
him
park around it and cherry pick. He doesn't need to cherry pick. Fight the next toughest guy.
Look, to your point, yes, they should come to a point where the UFC needs to have their ranking set, and if he's the #1 guy, he's the #1 guy. I think the whole thing with the Strikeforce imports might have confused everything a little bit, because is Chris Weidman any more deserving than Luke Rockhold for this title shot? My answer is a big question mark. Chris beat Damian Maia on 11 days' notice.
Yes.
He destroyed Mark Munoz. Now, I don't think that Mark Munoz is a top 5 middleweight anymore, but at the time he was #1 or #2, and Chris destroyed him.
He destroyed him. Absolutely.
And we don't know if Chris said that he will be healthy by July with his shoulder. Can setbacks happen? Yes, absolutely it can. So like I said, I think that if you're willing to wait, if you want to make this, Anderson Silva has 2 options. Either you fight Weidman, okay, You go up and fight John Jones in a super fight and just get paid the money and risk your perfect record.
Right.
Okay? Because you're not going to look at any less of a legend if you lose to John Jones or vice versa.
And if you beat John Jones, you're probably the greatest fighter that ever lived.
Ever lived. You know what? He's the GOAT no matter who he fights. But look, Silva doesn't want to lose to someone like Weidman, who is not amazingly marketable yet. Right. I think if you do Chris versus Luke Rockhold, it gives you a chance to build Rockhold status as a contender and give a little more credibility to the Strikeforce belt.
Yeah.
And it gives more credibility to Weidman, because if Weidman beats one more guy in the top 3, you cannot deny the fight regardless of what his name is. Right. You know, and just real quick before we go on to the next topic, the fact that they even called out Kung Lee is so bizarre to me. You know, Kung beat Patrick Cote. He knocked out Rich Franklin. That's fine. If you want to get real creative and you want to build up a Kung Lee fight, you got to have Kung Lee then fight Vitor Belfort. Yeah. And if he gets past Vitor, then fine, give him the title shot.
Right. And you know, and I thought that, to me, that was kind of like, yeah, we're in a weird Neverland. I was like, Kung Lee, I mean, yeah, Kung's fun. He's creative. When he's good, he's really good. But he hasn't done anything to warrant a title shot. So it was just a little bit baffling. Now, once we had the 3 upsets in a row, I thought that Frankie Edgar, Jose Aldo, I picked Aldo to lose by decision. I thought Frankie would be able to out-hustle him. You know, I'm not ashamed of the pick at all. I thought Edgar came close, came up a little bit short. But, you know, Edgar's lost 3 decisions in title fights now. Where does he go from here, and how impressed were you with both of their performances in this main event?
Okay, so to answer your question, where does Frankie go? Number one, I told you who I wanted to win and who I thought was going to win. Right. You know, Frankie's got the ability to beat Aldo. He does. If anyone in the division has that ability, I would put him at the top. There are some interesting matchups. I think he stays at 145. All right, without a question. He doesn't jump back to 155, and I don't think he goes down to 135. You know, losing to Jose Aldo by decision, and not by a crazy unanimous decision. You know, I had Edgar winning round 4, you know, and maybe one other round was kind of close. Yeah. I think Frankie just goes back to the board and says, all right, let's see who else in the division would be a good fight for me, and we take it from there. Look, you could put Frankie Edgar against Clay Guida.
Yes.
All right? You could put Frankie Edgar against the winner of Poirier and Cub Swanson.
Mm-hmm.
All right? You could put him against Korean Zombie.
Yeah.
All right? You know, and tell you the truth, I think someone like Ricardo Lamas really deserves the next title shot. They keep putting him as the underdog against these top guys, and he smokes them.
And you know, the interesting thing about Ricardo Lamas is he kind of reminds me a little bit of Chris Weidman. You know, like a really overpowering wrestler who maybe isn't the biggest name. But, I mean, who else are you going to throw in there against a dynamo like Aldo or Silva? I mean, you kind of need a hard-nosed guy, you know, to grind them down and maybe take advantage of, you know, their stamina or whatever. So I thought that...
Well, you know what? To your point, there's an interesting situation now. Apparently, as of last night, Anthony Pettis is willing to forfeit his 155 title shot to fight Aldo. And I think this is music to Dana White's ears, because now, here's what you can do. You put up Pettis against Aldo, which will absolutely sell, and Pettis has done whatever he's done to get whatever he wants. If he wanted to fight Anderson Silva right now, I'd probably say go ahead and do it.
Sure,
all right.
Sure.
I think what you do is I think you can put Pettis up against Aldo. I don't think someone like Lamas can get mad and say, wow, they just brought a guy from another division who doesn't deserve it. I mean, look, if Rashad Evans got a fight against Anderson Silva and he beat Little Nog, I would have been pissed if I was Weidman, because Rashad didn't even fight a middleweight fight, and he's only won 1 in a row.
Right.
Pettis has beaten the who's who of the lightweight division and deserves it. Then what you do is this. You put Pettis against Aldo. You then do Lamas versus Korean Zombie. All right. Right there, you then have a #1 contender fight. You have a very respectable title fight. All right. And then you leave the lightweight division wide open. You let Ben Henderson fight Gilbert Melendez. And if you're the UFC, you almost hope for a draw at that point, because you know that fight's going to be awesome. And you can do a rematch right away with Henderson and Melendez.
No, and if that's, you know, it's all about matches and creating kind of sustainability for every division. And the thing I love about Pettis' challenge is it's immediately exciting. I mean, I think people want to see Aldo challenge in an aggressive way, you know. And plus, if Pettis, you know, say he loses, we know it's going to be as exciting as all get out. And he can still go back to the lightweight division.
Exactly.
When a fighter can fight in two divisions, especially at a high level, like Rich Franklin did, that really doubles and amplifies his value to the promotion. And I think that's just a great plot line, and the UFC should run with it. It gives him a little bit of time, not necessarily to rush Frankie Edgar back into a rematch, because frankly, I think the guy deserves a fight against somebody that's not top 3 in the world. He's had a lot of tough fights back to back, and I think Pettis against Aldo is just a natural because it's kind of a win-win. So you really can't miss with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't give Frankie an immediate rematch either. I think it's way too soon for that. And I think actually bringing Pettis down to 145 opens a door for some other guys. For example, Josh Thompson versus Nate Diaz is a phenomenal fight at 155. Yeah. And you'll really get a chance to see where Josh is in regards. Josh, I actually thought might have beat Gilbert in their last fight. Yeah. And Thompson's been around forever. He's beat guys who are ranked high. He beat Pat Healy, somewhat, in the last couple of years. And Healy's now fighting Jim Miller. Right. So I think Pettis moving down to 145, even if he doesn't get the shot at Aldo and you do Pettis versus Korean Zombie for the #1 fight, whatever you want to do, I think it's a great move for the UFC.
No, and I think it's definitely exciting. It's always, it's always a good refreshing reminder. And when you see these cards, we go into, especially with bouts like Overeem against Silva or, Rashad Evans against Nogueira. It's always a nice, fresh reminder to realize that anything can happen in there. There are no givens, and, it's just every fight is a different animal on a wild card, and I think UFC 156 was a definitive reminder of that. So, folks, we'd love to thank you for joining us at MMATalkingHeads.com. If you want to send us your questions, viewer input, or a question you'd like answered on air the next episode, send us a tweet at twitter.com/MMATalkingHeads, and we will catch you next week. Thanks so much.